On this episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast, I sit down with my good friend and multiple-time podcast guest, Samuel Thomas Gordon Johnston, to talk about everything you need to know about how to build muscle and boost testosterone. In fact, I've been on Samuel's program for the past 3 weeks, and I've already built about 5 pounds of lean muscle mass. Boom. Check that out. If you're just listening, I just flexed my biceps, so check out the YouTube episode to see those gains. You guys can get the gains as well. The link to Samuel's social media as well as his website are in the description. I highly recommend checking him out. If you're a man who wants to build muscle, Samuel has got the formula dialed in. You can see by some of the testimonials that will flash on the screen. He's got it. He's got the secret formula, and he'll gladly give it to you. It works. I'm living proof of that. I will continue on his program for a few more weeks and see how much muscle I can build. At the end of this, I will be posting my before and after pics for a nice little transformation. All right, before we get into today's episode, I want to mention a couple of the supplements that we forgot to mention during the episode. So one of the supplements that I absolutely recommend everybody take if your goal is to build muscle is to supplement with creatine. Creatine is one of the most well-studied and documented supplements to increase muscle strength, muscle endurance, and it can also help with cognition as well. So I personally take 5 to 10 grams of creatine every single day, split up in 2 different doses. I put 5 grams in my morning coffee, and then I'll have 5 grams in my post-workout shake. So that's the first one that we forgot to mention. The second one is Shilajit. Shilajit has been proven to improve testosterone as well as a whole bunch of other factors, like it can increase energy. The Shilajit that I use is from my friend Zeb and his brand Clearly. You can find the link in the description for that. I take about how would I describe it? About a dime size serving every single morning. I just let it dissolve in water. All right, now for the show sponsors. This episode is brought to you by HVMN, Ketone IQ. This is fantastic for physical performance. I take a shot before I go to the gym, and I've noticed that I'm able to last longer. It provides sustained energy without any crash. So if you exercise in the evening, instead of relying on a super caffeinated pre-workout that's going to disrupt your sleep and kill your gains, because sleep is when your body repairs your muscles to grow bigger, I use Ketone IQ instead. So let's take a shot right now. Cheers. Aside from the physical benefits of ketones, I love the mental clarity performance boost that I get from it. About 20 minutes after taking it, I notice this heightened state of focus and clarity. It also knocks out hunger cravings. So if you're listening to this and your goal is to lose fat while building muscle, I highly recommend supplementing with Ketone IQ. You guys can get the hookup if you use code CaptainMorgan_20 at hvmn.com. All right, now let's get into today's episode with Samuel Thomas Gordon Johnston. Welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. I'm sitting down with one of my good friends and multiple podcast guests, Samuel Thomas Gordon Johnston. He is a men's health and fitness coach, and today we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about testosterone optimization and muscle building. So, before we dive into this episode, let's cheers.
Cheers. I've never taken these before.
IQ, Sam's first time. Everybody always tries to peel it off that way. I just twist and rip.
There we go.
Yeah.
And I just chug it.
Well, we butt chug it, so try. Suppository of ketones.
Oh my god. Yeah, I understand the all right. I'm sure the energy's great.
Yeah. We were talking before we started recording about how a lot of people bitch about the flavor. And I think...
it tastes like... I don't even... like...
Well, that's the monk fruit that they put in it. That's the sweetener. I think without that, it would be very bitter.
Mm-hmm. But it's like almost like fuel. Or like... I don't know. I feel like I just drank gasoline.
You know what I say is it's rocket fuel.
Rocket fuel, all right.
It's rocket fuel for your brain and your body. You'll start to feel the effects in about 20 minutes. Like once we get into recording, it gives your brain an extra little boost.
Let's go.
So, everything about muscle building and testosterone optimization, because this is a common question that I get all the time, and I'm sure that you obviously get all the time because this is your specialty, muscle building with guys, right? So, first off, let's get into some of the common misconceptions about how to build muscle and boost testosterone. Are there any common either protocols or supplements that people are taking or doing to build muscle or maximize their testosterone that are just completely bullshit?
I think the biggest mistake I see with guys that are in the gym looking to build muscle is they think that just going and lifting weights is going to get them the results they want. And I always coach on the 3 P's of effective training. The first P is following a program. If you're just walking into the gym and doing whatever you feel like, or even having a rough guideline of like, oh, today's legs, today's back, today's arms, but you're not tracking your weights, you're not doing the same exercises every week, you're not driving enough effort to create adaptation, you might get some results, but you're not going to get incredible results. So that's the first P, program. The second P is... You have a question?
Yeah, can we pause here?
Yeah.
So, I imagine this depends. Like, if I were to do that, I have a pretty good understanding of what I'm doing, right? So I intuitively train. I have been in the past, like, intuitively training. So I kind of go based on feel, like what I want to do in the gym that day. And I've been able to maintain my current physique, not following a program.
Right, so this is a great distinction. You're maintaining what you currently have. Correct.
Right, okay.
You're not building in additional strength, additional muscle. And most people who come into the gym and do what you do are not looking to maintain what they have. They're looking to get to the next level because they're not happy with where they're at.
Right.
You are in a different position because you're very happy with what you have, and you're like, hey, look, if I can put 2 hours a week into maintaining what I have while directing all this other energy into my business and, XYZ, great, that's what you're gonna do. But that's not the same situation that most novice trainees are in.
Right. Second point, you take someone who's never worked out before and they just start going to the gym and doing whatever. They're going to see results.
Probably,
Yes.
yeah, for some time, yeah. In the same way that if someone's super fat and they've never gone for a walk before, just going for a 5-minute walk a day will probably start to move them in the right direction.
Right.
Because the farther you have to go, the anything will help, right? But that plateau will come very quickly if you're not following a program, if you don't have a game plan on here's where you are, here's where you want to be 6 months from now, and here's the map of how to get from point A to point B.
Got it. Agreed. So in terms of muscle building, optimizing muscle building, which is what we're talking about, following a program.
Always.
Yes. Cool.
Always.
What's the second P?
The second piece is proximity to failure. Well, actually, no, let's hit progressive overload first. So progressive overload is the principle that effectively is about you needing to constantly go a little bit beyond what you're currently capable of so that your body has a reason to adapt. If you're always going into the gym and you're lifting the same weights, you're doing the same amount of reps, you're just going in there and doing what you've always done, your body has no reason to change because it's no novel stimulus. It's nothing beyond what it's done in the past, right? So progressive overload is this idea of going 1% farther every workout through increasing the weight, adding more reps, or increasing the intensity, or more sets, right? Like we have all these levers in a program that we can pull, more weight, more reps, more sets, and progressive overload is the principle of ensuring that we're actually continually making things a little bit harder so that your body has a reason to grow and adapt.
Got it. Cool. So again, in terms of optimizing muscle building, which is what we're talking about in this episode, progressive overload is the path to do that. Before we get into the last P, let's differentiate other reasons why people would be going to the gym, because like muscle building versus fat loss versus overall, like just general fitness, these can all be looked at differently. Yes.
Yeah, and for most things where it's skill development or even cardiovascular based or anaerobic training, the principle of progressive overload is the same. That's how we grow as humans. We do things that are slightly uncomfortable for us or a bit beyond our capacity. You can even bring that same lens to learning how to play the guitar. If you're constantly just doing the basic shit that you learned on day one, your brain has no, it's not being pushed to grow and learn and acquire new skills and adapt. When it comes to fat loss, sure, you could make the argument that progressive overload is in that training, because if I have you in a caloric deficit and you just do this for 12 hours a day, you're gonna lose fat. There's no magic to fat loss. But the reason
you should create that program.
Yeah. Join my mastermind. But the reason why, if your goal is fat loss, we should also be focusing on muscle building is because the more muscle you have, the higher your metabolism will be and the more calories you'll be burning all the time.
So let's bust this myth before we continue on to the third P, because this is a big one that I see a lot of people going after. Is maybe they're just starting to go to the gym, they're 30 plus pounds overweight, and they think they need to do excessive cardio and just run or go on the Stairmaster or whatever for hours at a time to lose the fat. And so talk to us about the importance of, if your goal is fat loss, to focus on building of the muscle.
Exactly. So there's a few lenses we can look at it through. One is the lens of caloric expenditure, right? So it is correct that you can burn calories doing anything. You can burn calories running, swimming, going for a hike, lifting weights. But the reason why I am a huge proponent of making resistance training your primary vehicle for body composition changes is because building more muscle will increase your metabolic rate, your basal metabolic rate, the amount of calories that you're burning just to stay alive. So if we can get that number higher through resistance training, not only are you going to be burning more calories while you're sleeping, while you're at your desk, while you're recording a podcast, because you can think of your muscle cells as these little furnaces that are requiring more energy to maintain. Also, you're going to have the physique that you want by the time you lose the weight. Like what people need to understand is that if you are 30 pounds overweight, you don't want to be skinny fat.
Yeah.
Like when you don't want to lose fat, you don't want to lose 30 pounds, but still have a little belly and like a small torso by the time you're done. You want to have muscle. You want to have muscle definition. You want to have a physique you're proud of. So that's why building muscle and resistance training is going to be the best way to do that, because you're giving your body the stimulus it needs to build more muscle.
And that also goes into testosterone optimization too, because if you're 30 pounds overweight, there's no way that you have optimal testosterone levels. So if you're
and to couple on top of that, we know that excessive cardiovascular training can just deplete your hormone levels even further. And
yes.
Resistance training is going to be a far better tool for improving your hormone levels, specifically looking at things like testosterone and HGH.
Cool. So myth busted. I was listening to an Andrew Huberman podcast on testosterone optimization before this, doing a little homework, and he says that based on the research, exactly what you just said, endurance training, specifically longer than like 75 minutes, can dramatically reduce testosterone levels. And if you are going to do endurance training, like if you're a cross trainer, like maybe you really enjoy running, for example, but you still want to put on muscle and lift weights in the gym, he says that it's best to do your endurance training after.
Always after.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because the amount of effort that you can exert in your lifts is a primary indicator of what kind of muscle growth stimulus you're going to create in your workout. So if you're fatiguing yourself pre-workout, you're going to have less to give in your lifts. And I think there's an important note to be made here in that we don't think cardio is bad. Like a lot of people like to label cardio as this boogeyman. And cardiovascular training can be very good for overall health, longevity, heart health. In my opinion, it should come secondary to your resistance training if your goal is body composition, testosterone, fat loss. But doing 90 minutes to 2 hours of zone 2 cardio, which is it's low intensity steady state cardio, so anywhere from like 125 beats per minute to 145 beats per minute, anywhere from 60 minutes to 120 minutes per week is fine. That's not going to take away from the gains that you're getting in the gym. Research has actually shown that a higher baseline of cardiovascular health can increase your capacity to build muscle. So they are complementary, but the priority, in my opinion, if we're going for the changes that we're talking about here, should always be on resistance training.
Yes, agreed. Huberman also mentioned in that same episode, one of the reasons why cyclists, for example, often get caught with testosterone, Lance Armstrong being the prime example, is because they're doing so much endurance training, their testosterone levels are going to decline, like we mentioned. So for them, it's not so much they're taking testosterone to get jacked, they're taking it to maintain.
To survive.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. All right, so let's get to the third P of, is there a name for it? Like the 3 Ps of...
PPP. The PPP method.
The PPP method.
I just call it
Enlarge your
PPs.
PP.
Yeah. Grow your PPP. No, I right now I'm calling it the 3 Ps of effective training, but maybe we'll be calling it the triple P protocol by the time we're done here.
I like that.
All right.
Triple P protocol.
All right. So we've talked about program, progressive overload, and the third is proximity to failure. Okay, so proximity to failure is how close to failure are you going on your lifts. One of the massive problems I see in gyms, and it's what's interesting is I go to a gym where it's a huge bodybuilding focus. So the sample size of the gym that I go to is unique because most people there know their shit. Even then, there's a lot of people that aren't driving enough effort. And I use the gun to your head method. So the question you should be asking yourself when you finish a set is, if I had a gun to my head, if Sam was in here with me in the gym and he had a gun to my head and your life depended on it, how many more reps could you have done? And for most people, if they're being honest, from what I see, most people are stopping a set when they have like 7 or 6 or 5 reps left in the tank. They're going, it starts to feel a little bit hard, and then they're done, right? And in order to effectively build muscle, you need to be going to at least within 3 reps of failure. So when you finish a set and you ask yourself, how many more reps could I have done if my life depended on it? If you ever answer more than 3, you're not working hard enough. Now, some people will say like going up to a place where you have 5 reps left in the tank and stopping is okay, but really that should only be used on like a deload session or an intro session where you're ramping yourself up to a higher intensity. At the end of the day, if you're stopping with anything more than 2 to 3 reps left in the tank, you're not working hard enough and you're not giving your body the stimulus it needs to actually build muscle.
Got it. So if you feel called out right now, like I do.
Talking to you.
Good.
Talking to you.
Talking to me. Good. I've noticed the same thing. People drastically underestimate the amount of intensity needed to actually drive results, specifically if you're looking for results faster, right? Like there's nothing wrong with wanting results faster. Like you can absolutely get the results if you... What if somebody stops at like 5 reps and then so if somebody stopped at 5 reps per exercise, would they get the same results in a longer time frame than somebody who stops at 3 reps in a shorter time frame?
No. You are going to get better results if you can drive more effort. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Now that doesn't mean you need to go to complete failure every time, right? Like,
that's actually one of the things that Huberman mentioned in that episode was that going to complete failure can actually do harm on testosterone levels, primarily due to elevated cortisol.
Yeah, and I might argue that based off of overall training volume, right? Like for me right now, when I go into the gym, I only do 2 sets per lift, but I'm going basically 2 RPE 9 or RPE 10 on every set that I do. So
and RPE is
rate of perceived exertion. So the RPE scale, RPE 10 is I'm standing there with a gun to your head, your life depended on it, and you could not possibly have exerted any more life force into completing that set. RPE 9 is 1 rep away from that, RPE 8 is 2 reps away from that, so on and so on and so on, right? So, you know, really famous bodybuilder Dorian Yates, he famously only did like 1 set per exercise, but he would go until he could not do anything else. So I think, you know, in terms of the actual mechanisms that drive hypertrophy, there's still a lot of gray area in terms of like what the secret combination is that is going to get you the best possible result. For me, it makes sense that if you are driving a fuck ton of effort on your lifts, as long as you're dialing back the overall volume that you're doing, I don't think that would hurt your testosterone levels. I think it might actually be better for them.
So on this note, let's talk about sets and reps. Obviously the answer is it depends, but are there general guidelines? Like I was under the assumption, still am under the assumption unless you can provide new evidence that in general sets between 10 and 15 reps are optimal for hypertrophy, as long as you're saying they're within that RPE 8 or 7 of perceived exertion.
Yeah. I'm really glad we're diving into this because that's completely false.
Okay.
Research has shown that you can get equal hypertrophy benefit anywhere in the 5 rep range to the 30 rep range.
For hypertrophy specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if we're talking strength focused, we want to be below 5 reps.
Right.
And if you're below 5 reps, you're not going to be getting much of a stimulus for hypertrophy. Okay, but if we're between 5 on the low end and 30 on the high end, you can create hypertrophy. And the main dictator of whether or not that will happen is, are you hitting the required intensity or stimulus?
Got it.
Right? Like, think about it this way. Your brain isn't counting your rep. Your pec, when you're doing bench press,
it doesn't care about the
counting it.
numbers.
It's not like, oh, I'm not going to grow until we get to the 10th rep, right? Like, oh, we hit 10, okay, I'm going to grow.
Yeah.
It's simply responding to stress. And the way that volume is calculated most often now is sets per week. Sets per muscle group per week. Because whether or not you're going to do 5 reps or 15 reps, the end destination should be the same in terms of you getting to that rep where you're like you're really fighting it, right? So if all roads lead to that, that's what we're actually going for, is that dogfight of a rep where you're grinding through it. That's the stimulus that's going to lead to growth. Now, other things do matter, like volume matters, but again, volume isn't really equated or measured in the way that you were talking about where we're counting reps. It's effective sets per week. So how many working sets are we doing per muscle group per week?
Gotcha.
And in terms of the right number to do with that, anywhere from like 8 sets per muscle group per week all the way up to like 15 or 20, depending on a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously, if someone is anabolically enhanced, that they can handle a lot more volume. So training age is super relevant. How hard are you actually pushing on your sets is super relevant too. So what I found for me is, as my training age has increased, as I've become more advanced in the gym, and I therefore have more control over my nervous system, and I can push way fucking harder on those lifts, I can actually handle less overall volume now, because I'm able to go so deep and bring on so much stress in each set that I do that my body can't tolerate the total volume that I was doing before at the intensity that I can now drive.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Glad we clarified that. So a follow-up question to that: can you build muscle on lower weights. Like if you were to do lower weights at the high repetition range, let's do a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, if you were to do lower weight up into the 30 rep range,
yeah,
or heavier weight into the lower 5 rep range,
yeah,
can you still build the same amount of muscle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are certain certain exercises lend themselves better to higher reps or lower reps. Like I never prescribe really going above 15 reps. I don't see a point to it, and I think there actually is a detriment to you just doing more work than you need to. Like if you can get the same benefit in 10 reps, and we know that, then what's the fucking point in going to 30? Unless you just like want to spend 3 hours in the gym, right? So for that reason, I never program above 15 reps, ever, really. And yeah, the benefits, you can get equal muscle growth in either end of that rep range, and some exercises will lend themselves better to higher reps or lower reps. So a good example would be something like a cable shoulder raise, like a cable delt raise. You can't really handle much load there. Like at the very most, you'll go up to like 30. If you're strong, maybe if you're super strong, you'll do like 30 or 40 or 35 or 40. As a result of that, I'm gonna bias in the direction of more reps for an exercise like that, just because it's weaker. It doesn't make sense to try and really load up the weight to get into that like 5 or 6 or 7 rep range. But other exercises like a hack squat or RDL or something, I would be fine with loading up with more weight and using a lower rep number, because of the fact that that area of tissue can tolerate load in a much better way than something like a delt can.
Got it. Okay.
And another good thing to do is just variation, just so you don't get bored in the gym. Like if we know that when you're doing incline dumbbell press, it doesn't really matter if you're doing 15 reps or 12 reps or 10 reps or 8 reps or 6 reps. Let's vary it through that so that you get it. You can have a novel experience, and it's not from this standpoint of like, oh, it's muscle confusion. That's not what's happening. It's just more fun for you when you're not doing the same fucking weight at the same rep scheme all the time.
Is muscle confusion like changing the
exercise
apparatus that you use, or the timing that you use, or there's so many different things that you could do, from time of day to temperature that you train to one of my favorites is like switching out dumbbells for kettlebells, for example. Does that play an important role in breaking a plateau?
No, not at all. So the idea of muscle confusion, in that like you're training one pattern and your body gets used to it, so then you confuse it with a new pattern, is going to lead to a better outcome. It's not true. And if anything, that actually is counterproductive for you building strength and building muscle. One of the primary focuses of an effective program is specificity. If you're going into the gym and one day you're doing, incline bicep curls, the other day you're doing cable bicep curls, the other day you're doing hammer, like you're just doing everything different every day. We're constantly changing the stimulus that your body's trying to adapt to. Therefore, the lack of specificity could actually be detrimental to the muscle growth and strength that we're trying to build. So what we typically do with programming is we'll operate in like a 12 to 16 week block, where the exercise selection basically stays the same unless there's like an injury or something about the program isn't working for a particular client, then we can change it. But barring anything like that, we'll stay with the same exercise selection for the most part for a 12 to 16 week block. And then after that block, we'll make some changes, but not from the standpoint of muscle confusion. Like we're not going to surprise the muscle into doing something else. It's more, we've accumulated a lot of stress in the shortened position of your pec, or whatever the particular area that we're focusing on in that program is. Let's go ahead and have a different focus for the next 12 to 16 week block.
So that's what I more meant, is not like on a weekly basis changing it up, but more over a prolonged period of time, because I'm blanking on the specific name for this, but I know, for example, if you were to only do push-ups, your body gets more efficient at doing push-ups, and therefore you burn less calories. I'm not familiar if that has an impact on muscle building. You're saying that doesn't have an effect on muscle building?
Well,
like if you were to only do like 3 movements, like for the rest of your life, as long as you have progressive overload, you're saying that you can still continue to build muscle.
Oh yeah, you'll get really fucking strong in those movements. But then there's also the point of like, you probably have some other things you want to work on too, right? Does someone just want to have big shoulders, big arms, and big triceps? Or do they also want to have a big chest, a big back, big lats, big glutes, big quads, there's a lot going on with the human body. So with that, we can't ever make everything the priority all at once. So I like to think of it as like a pyramid, where we're like going from one corner up a little bit to the other corner, then up a little bit to the other corner, and we're like kind of making our way around the pyramid as we slightly change the focus every 12 to 16 week block.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad we started out with these myth busting session, right? Is there anything else that comes to mind that people are doing? Or...
those are the big ones. Those are the ones that I talk a lot about and give names to, because they're so common. A lot of people just doing random shit in the gym, not driving enough effort, not going close enough to failure, not continually making things a bit more challenging. So those are the massive problems that I see a lot of people making. I'm sure there are more, and we'll probably dive into a few more just as we're talking. Yeah. But yeah, those are definitely the more common ones.
Cool. All right, now I'm going to mention why I wanted to have this podcast in the first place, is because, as you know, I've been traveling around a lot and spending a lot of my time in Minnesota, which there hasn't been a lot of sun there. And I've just noticed that my testosterone, although I haven't gotten it tested, I can just feel that it's at its lowest that it's been in a while. Both from a physical standpoint, I'm the smallest that I've been. From an energetic standpoint, I can feel that I'm not quite at the peak. And I attribute this to the amount of travel that I've been doing. So a lot of oxidative stress, from the lack of sunlight, because as we're going to get into, sunlight plays a massive role, arguably the biggest role in overall health and testosterone. And then also inconsistent heavy training has been a big role, because when traveling, it's difficult to have that same, consistent schedule of heavy lifting specifically. Like when I'm in Minnesota, I do primarily body weight exercises, and there are ways that I can hack muscle growth, like for example with BFR bands. So when I have only a kettlebell like that, I can get a similar effect with lighter weight, right? But it's nowhere near if I were to have access to a gym, right? So now let's get into testosterone optimization. Let's cover big movers first, right? Sunlight, sleep, nutrition, and training.
Yeah.
Let's cover those. So for sunlight, I'm sure you guys know, plays a huge role in vitamin D, right? That's what everybody knows it for. And vitamin D is absolutely crucial for testosterone levels. Sunlight also increases nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator. It expands the blood vessels, which will allow for better blood flow to the muscles, and allow for better recovery, better muscle pumps. Early morning sunlight also helps you sleep. And so everything kind of ties in together. So it's not like you can just have one and have healthy testosterone levels. That's why my brand is the Captain's Lifestyle. Like, it's all encompassing. So talk a little bit about why you prioritize early morning, low angle sunlight.
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind with that is a healthy circadian rhythm, which affects everything, right? It's your energy and focus during the day. It's how well you're sleeping during the night, which then fuels the next day, and it's this endless cycle. So that's the big reason why I always prioritize getting anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour long of exposure first thing in the morning of low angle sun. And then to just trying to spend as much of my time as I can shirtless in the sun, whenever I can, taking my shirt off, being as naked as possible, as appropriately naked as possible. And yeah, from overall energy, testosterone levels, health, recovery, mood too, it just feels great. And the more I've focused on the more holistic aspects of wellness outside of lifting weights in the gym and eating a lot of protein, things like going for walks in the sun, breathing properly, grounding, cold exposure, all of this stuff comes together into you feeling like a superhuman.
Yeah.
Right? And sunlight's one of the most important things and one of the most overlooked things too.
Yeah.
As most people are under shitty quality lights, I see people all the time going for morning walks with sunglasses on. I'm like, no, don't do it. You were so close.
So close.
Yeah.
So close.
Like young people too. I'm like, you don't have fucked up eyes. Like take those sunglasses off. It's the idea that a lot of people have that the sun is bad for us, which is mind blowing.
Yeah. I want to dive deeper into the circadian rhythm benefits of the sun, because circadian rhythm in my opinion, is the most important thing you can do from a health standpoint. So as Sam said, getting that early morning sunlight into your eyes raises dopamine, raises serotonin, helps you be more alert, feel good and productive during the day. It also shuts off melatonin production in the morning, so it wakes you up, and it resets it for about 14 to 16 hours later that night. So it actually helps you sleep better. And this is crucial because in deep sleep specifically is where your body releases a lot of testosterone and HGH, fantastic for muscle building, obviously. So
it's our internal TRT clinic.
Right, yes. So if you are not getting adequate deep sleep specifically, this could be due to a whole host of reasons, most notably sunlight and exposure to blue light in the evening. If that's compromised, you're sacrificing your body's free anabolic steroids, right? So get outside, watch the sunrise. Like that is something that I prioritize every single day. Even on an overcast day, get out there. You're gonna want to spend a little bit longer on overcast days, but it's crucial for everything we already mentioned, daily productivity and specifically sleep, and that leads to testosterone optimization because it's free, right? Just get out, watch the sunrise, get good sleep. Your body releases testosterone on its own. Okay. Let's see. Next major mover we can discuss is let's stick on sleep. So for sleep, we're not going to dive deep into sleep because I in fact just released a comprehensive episode on sleep. So if you want to listen to that, I believe it's episode 160. I think it's titled Sleep Optimization with Matt Gallant. And in that episode, we cover literally everything from the most important things to the little bells and whistles that you can implement to optimize your sleep quality. So if your sleep sucks and you want to boost your testosterone and build muscle, you need to start prioritizing your sleep. So go listen to that episode. We cover everything you need to know about optimizing your sleep. Next up, let's discuss nutrition. You can't out-train a bad diet, right? Nutrition is crucial, especially if you're looking to optimize testosterone levels. So what are some of the main core components of a testosterone / muscle building diet?
First thing is going to be high protein intake. That's the number one thing outside of, you need to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. The first thing, I just find that's oftentimes not helpful advice to give someone because it gets them focusing on what they can't have rather than what they can have.
Speaking of a high quality protein diet, it's not enough just to get enough protein. You want to make sure that you're actually digesting and absorbing the protein that you are consuming. So for me, when I'm bulking, especially and trying to build muscle, I'm consuming a shit ton of food. I'm eating upwards of 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day. With that comes at least 200 grams of protein. And to make sure that my body actually absorbs all of those nutrients, I supplement with my digestive SWAT team from Bioptimizers. This is a combination of masszymes, hydrochloric acid, and P3OM, which is their probiotic that has actually been patented and shown to not only improve the lining of the gut so you absorb more nutrients, but it actually helps break down protein, as does the hydrochloric acid, which is stomach acid, and the masszymes. It's a combination of digestive enzymes that help you break down the food, because you're not just what you eat, you are what you absorb. So I've found that my digestive SWAT team that I take before each meal has dramatically reduced the strain on my digestive system. So especially when I'm bulking, I reduce a lot of those symptoms like bloating, acid reflux, indigestion. It's helped tremendously. So if you guys want to maximize your muscle building experience and get the most out of your nutrients, use code Captain Morgan at bioptimizers.com.
So if I get someone eating a high protein diet, they're all of a sudden eating 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. Not only are they fueling themselves with what they need to build muscle, but it's going to be way easier for them to be in a caloric deficit now, because protein is the most satiating macronutrient. So it's going to curb the hunger cravings, and it's going to be very easy for them to maintain a calorie deficit. So high protein diet, a lot of high quality proteins like grass-fed beef, eggs, whey protein can be a good option. Having some Greek yogurts, obviously focusing on whole foods and nutrient-dense nutrition. But yeah, that's the first thing that I typically focus on with my clients, is getting them comfortable eating a very high protein diet.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch more on the quality of the protein. We are what we eat, right? Our cells are literally comprised of what we put into our bodies, mm-hmm. right? We can also take that a step further and say we are what we ate. So if you're eating conventionally raised beef that are fed inflammatory corn, soy, grains, especially if they're sprayed with pesticides, you are then internalizing that stress and inflammation that the cow had. Mm. So while yes, eating conventionally raised beef is a better quality protein than a Beyond Meat burger, for example, if you can seek out that, like Sam said, the grass-fed meat, 100% grass-fed, because now I've noticed that they'll try to trick you. Mm-hmm. They'll say, yeah, our meat's grass-fed, but it's grain finished. Mm-hmm. So look for 100% grass-fed or grass-fed and grass-finished or regeneratively raised. That's like the gold standard. Same thing for eggs. Like if you eat cage-free or free-range eggs, those are basically meaningless. Like the hens are super stressed out. They're living in their own shit a lot of times. A lot of times they're fed hormones. So look for pasture-raised eggs. You'll notice the quality of the shell. If you get a low-quality egg, the shell is very weak and brittle. If you get a higher quality egg, it's a little bit more difficult to crack. You can also tell by the yolk, the color of the yolk. If it's a deep orange or amber color, that in general signifies a healthier yolk. That can be supplemented through if they feed them marigolds, for example, I think is a common thing to enhance the color and the omega-3 content of the eggs. But gold standard, look for pasture-raised eggs. Okay, so we covered high quality protein. Also, raw milk is a fantastic source. Mm. We don't have to go down the whole raw milk rabbit hole. We'll cover the basics. If you're drinking pasteurized, homogenized, low-fat milk, you're better off drinking your own piss.
Hey, some people think that's a great idea, so...
That is, yeah, urine therapy is actually a thing. I am not well versed in that at all. But, yeah, the...
Salty Gatorade.
Pasteurized, homogenized milk is devoid of all of the probiotics, a lot of the enzymes that raw milk contains. So if raw milk is illegal in your state, either don't drink milk or find somebody who's dealing it under the table, like we found here in Austin. We've got some raw milk dealers. We actually just picked up a gallon today, and it's delicious. It's full of fat. Let's cover the low fat myth. If anybody's still on that, fat is bad and we should reduce fat if we're looking to lose fat. Cholesterol is a precursor to testosterone. You need healthy fats in your diet to build muscle and to lose fat and optimize testosterone levels. So let's now talk on quality fat sources.
Yeah, well, I think every macronutrient has been demonized at one point or another, but they're all important. Like, for optimal health, I believe that we should all have high quality protein, carbs, and fats. But for go-to sources of fat, getting high quality fat from high quality animal proteins is a great option. And then having other options like grass-fed butter for cooking oil, having some refined coconut oil or beef tallow or avocado oil. Really making a conscious effort to stay away from the hyper-processed and low-quality seed oils like canola oil, soybean, any kind of vegetable oil. I often put butter and MCT oil in my coffee, so good options to get your fat in egg yolk, like you said. Those are all pretty good options for fat.
And when you're looking for yogurt, like Sam mentioned, Greek yogurt, I always go with full-fat, grass-fed yogurt. If anything says fat-free or even sugar-free, that's a big red flag. Especially if it says sugar-free, that usually means that it's got some sort of artificial sweetener in there, which can wreak havoc on your gut microbiome and cause things like brain fog and things like that. So look for full fat. Fat is good for you. And
the one thing I would push back on there is I'm actually okay with something like non-fat Greek yogurt, just because I am eating so much red meat already that if I'm trying to stay below a certain fat threshold, I do need to pull back a bit there. For me, I like to have a very high carb number because my goal is to build muscle and fuel myself for workouts like that. So if I'm trying to stay under like 90 grams of fat per day or 100 grams of fat per day, me getting an additional 15 to 20 grams of fat through a full fat Greek yogurt likely isn't moving that number in the right direction for me. But again, the point there isn't to be afraid of fat, it's just be mindful of overall macronutrient consumption. That's not me saying fat is bad, that's me saying that if your goal is to hit 90 grams of fat or 100 grams of fat, then having some fat-free yogurt options can be a good way to get protein in the absence of fat, because sometimes hitting a high protein number while not going over on a fat metric from the macros that I've created for clients can be a bit of a balancing act.
Got it. All right, so now let's talk on carbs. You said carbs are crucial for muscle building.
For sure.
Of course they are. The amount of carbs that people are having depends on their amount of physical activity in general.
For sure.
Right? So if you're looking to, like, I eat a shit ton of carbs, I'm sure you eat a shit ton of carbs. What about somebody who's overweight, who's looking to put on muscle? How do you structure their carb intake? Yeah,
well, for someone who's overweight and they want to put on muscle, I would still probably have them in a caloric deficit, because in most cases, if someone's really overweight, they're still going to be a very novice trainee, and novice trainees can lose fat and build muscle at the same time. So, I would, if I had to make up a number, like, they'd probably be somewhere between like 150 to 200 grams of carb per day initially to start. I don't go on a low carb diet too often for clients, just because with the amount of resistance training I have them doing, I want them to be fueled for that. And I have gone lower carb for some people depending on their life situation and their goals, but it's not a common thing that I do with clients. So yeah, typically anywhere between like 150. For guys who are lean and wanting to get bigger, I've had some guys eating like 450 grams of carb per day.
Oh yeah.
Which is a lot. It's hard work.
We're going to touch on that next, but first, what are some of your go-to carb sources?
Organic basmati rice that I like to soak beforehand to increase the digestibility of it. Sweet potato, I really like to get cans of pureed sweet potato because it's so easy to eat them. Orange juice, coconut water, puffed rice cereal with grass-fed or with raw milk, fruit, apples, citrus, any kind of like mango, pineapple, blueberries. Those are my go-tos.
Maple syrup.
If I'm trying to intentionally bulk, raw honey and maple syrup. Yeah.
I love it. Those are some of my go-tos. Mm-hmm. Also pancakes. I had this company called Noosh sponsor the immersion. They make protein pancakes, gluten-free, sugar-free, artificial sweetener-free. Those are freaking bomb.
Noosh, I haven't heard of those.
Yeah,
I've had some from Birch Blenders. They're like a gluten-free bake company.
Nice. Speaking of gluten is something you want to be mindful of. Both from a muscle building and testosterone optimization standpoint, because gluten can cause inflammation. It can cause the lining of your gut to deteriorate, which your gut is your second brain. So if your gut has essentially holes poked in it, that can lead to a whole host of problems. And gluten is, especially American gluten, is one of the highest sprayed crops in pesticides. So that adds another layer of damage. So I personally almost never eat gluten. It's very rare that I eat gluten, and when I do, I've got Gluten Guardian from Bioptimizers to help me digest some of that, but I stay away from most gluten. When I do consume it, I look for an organic gluten, so at least it's not covered in pesticides. All right, so we covered some carb sources. Now let's talk on caloric deficit versus caloric surplus. So you mentioned if clients are overweight and they have a young training age, they can build muscle and lose fat at the same time, and you put them in a caloric deficit.
Yeah.
If somebody is lean and they want to build muscle, they need to be in a caloric surplus, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to talk on general guidelines of what that could look like for people? Because for me, like when I'm intentionally trying to bulk up and put on muscle, I'm eating between 4,000 and 5,000 calories a day.
So I'll caveat all of this by saying that whatever calculation we create in terms of trying to guess effectively what a caloric surplus or a caloric deficit is going to be is always an educated shot in the dark. We're using averages of what we know through science and what most people are, but really you find out what the right number is for a particular individual by making an educated guess, tracking very accurately, and then watching changes happen or lack of changes happen, and then course correcting from there. But a very rough and messy guide for how many calories someone should be eating is if they are wanting to lose weight, multiplying their body weight by 10 to 12, and that giving you the total number of calories you should be eating if you want to lose weight. And then if you want to gain weight, taking your body weight and multiplying it by 14 to 16, and that being the general a goalpost that you could start with to know how many calories you should be eating.
Got it. What are more accurate measurements? Like I've done the in-body test, which tells you your BMR, and so based on that.
Does it tell you your BMR there?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe they have different models, but the one that I did, it tells you your specific BMR.
Well, even if it's telling you your BMR, it's not telling you your TDEE. So your TDEE is your total daily energy expenditure, which is the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's always step one in calculating what the right amount of food for someone to be eating is calculate their maintenance calories. How much do they need to eat to maintain what they currently have today, and then put them in either a caloric deficit or a caloric surplus depending on what their goals are. But step one is always calculating maintenance calories.
Got it. Okay. So we touched on sunlight, we touched on sleep, we touched on training, we touched on nutrition. Now let's talk about another major component of testosterone and muscle building, the reducing of stress. Right? When cortisol is increased, testosterone is decreased. They have an inverse relationship like that. So what are some of the things that you do to reduce unhealthy cortisol?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is always going to be getting proper sleep. That's like the first defense we have against stress, making sure we're getting proper sleep. Regular exercise, again, stress reduction is built into that. But in terms of things that are outside of sleep and exercise, which we've already talked about, meditation is super important. Developing that skill to actually focus your attention on what you want it to be focused on, not the loudest signal in the room. Grounding, walking, spending time in the sun, I find that to put me in a very parasympathetic state. Breathing, being aware of how we're breathing through our nose, long exhaled breathing. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Self-hypnosis. Andrew Huberman talks a lot about NSDR, non-sleep deep rest, and that's taking 10 minutes to lay down on the couch and do like a body awareness scan. So anything that interrupts your daily external stimulation and brings your focus inward to center yourself, to calm yourself down, I think is a really useful tool to have in your toolkit.
Love it. To touch on grounding a little bit, this is a fantastic method to reduce stress. One, because it's free. All you got to do is take your shoes off and go stand outside. And it's fantastic from a stress and inflammation reduction standpoint. We don't have to get into the science behind it here, but that shit works. Breathing is also super important. As you guys know, I've got it tattooed on my hand here. Specifically, like Sam said, the longer the exhale, the more down regulatory and sympathetic that breathing is. Parasympathetic. Sorry, yeah, I got that switched. Also, nasal breathing specifically plays a huge role in boosting nitric oxide, which, as we already talked about, you can get that from the sun as well, and a couple of other things. There's supplements for it. But again, it's free. You can get it simply through breathing through the nose. So when you're exercising, 95% of what you're doing should be done nasally. It took me about a year to get fully comfortable with this after mouth breathing, because nobody ever taught me this. So I mouth breathed when I was in intense workouts. So again, it took me about a year. And for a little bit, I did have to dial my intensity down to maintain that level of nasal breathing. But now nasal breathing is one of the biggest performance enhancers. Like, I've noticed my overall fitness increase dramatically now that I can control my breathing during workouts. So that is crucial. All right, now let's dive into supplements. The thing that everybody wants to talk about when thinking about testosterone and muscle building. So what are some of the supplements that you use and recommend for boosting testosterone?
Number one, magnesium. Vitamin D can be really helpful too.
Especially in the winter months.
Yeah, boron. A high protein diet is going to be helpful for all the reasons we just discussed. But in terms of like sexier supplements that we can take, I haven't tried any of the above, but I know they are documented to have positive benefits. Things like Fedoja agrestis, Tonkat Ali.
I'm taking both currently.
There we go.
Just started taking both.
Okay, so you don't have an opinion on them yet?
I have, honestly, this may just be placebo. I've been taking them for maybe not quite a week, maybe 5 days. And in combination with getting more sunlight and consistent training those past 5 days, I've felt a lot better from like when I was in Minnesota. I already feel much more energetic, much more vitality. It seems to me as if my testosterone has improved. Whether or not that's actually the case in my body, again, I haven't had it tested, but knowing what I know about the mind and we are the placebo, whatever I think and however I feel, that's what we're looking for, right? So I have noticed a difference. I watched a few videos on Fedoja, and there's concerns about it being toxic to the testes specifically. We won't get too in depth into that.
So I heard Kyle Gillette talk about this on the Huberman Lab podcast, and he was saying like the amount that they were giving these rats to cause that damage is like in excess of 100 times what a human is taking.
So I watched a video that mentioned that,
Okay.
and he said that the calculation is off, and who knows, this guy may be full of shit, and what you're saying is accurate, but the video that I watched said that the calculations are relatively accurate once you do the actual calculation from rodents to human, and it corresponds to the dosages that they're recommending. So he did say, however, that days in rodents and humans is completely different. Like 1 day in a rat is the equivalent of like, I think 28 to 30 something days in a human. So they were dosing these rats for much longer periods of time than we should be on these supplements. So at the end of the video, he said, like, if you're taking that for like a month, it should be fine, right? Which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these for a month, see how I feel, and then cycle on and off, which is a good recommendation for any sort of testosterone boosting supplement. You want to cycle these things on and off. Ashwagandha is one that's got a lot of research behind it, both from a stress reduction standpoint, energy standpoint, and also testosterone boosting standpoint. So I take ashwagandha as well. Magnesium, you mentioned, that's a big one. That's crucial too.
Zinc too.
Yeah, zinc and magnesium. Shout out to Bioptimizers, Magnesium Breakthrough. If you want to hook up on what I imagine to be the best magnesium, click the link in the description to get 10% off Magnesium Breakthrough, which combines 7 different forms of bioavailable magnesium. All right, to close it out here, let's talk on other random little things that we can do to optimize testosterone. So EMF exposure is a big one. Like if you use your laptop on your lap, you keep your cell phone in your pocket, that has been proven to reduce testosterone.
Yeah.
Right. So as Sam mentioned, the electromagnetic fields that are emitted from your laptop, phone, 5G towers, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, any electronic device have been proven to reduce sperm count, reduce sperm quality. That leads to infertility. It's also potentially linked to erectile dysfunction and a lowering of testosterone. EMFs have also been shown to reduce melatonin, which is the sleep hormone that helps your body get into deep sleep, which, as we mentioned, is when your body releases naturally testosterone. So if your body's not producing enough melatonin because it's being exposed to too much EMFs, then of course you're not going to produce as much testosterone. So there's many ways that EMFs can impact your testosterone. EMFs also increase oxidative stress, and as we talked about, too much stress and inflammation also can decrease testosterone. So what I do to protect myself from EMFs, especially when I'm working on my laptop in crowded areas where everybody's on their cell phone signal, I use Aries EMF products. The one that I've got in my room here is the LifeTune Flex. This provides up to 93 feet of protection. And what this does is it actually draws in the EMFs and modulates them and makes them less harmful to the body. So it harmonizes the energy. You guys can get the hookup on anything from Aries. I've also got their sticker on the back of my phone, so I'm protected wherever I go. I've got their sticker on my computer as well. You guys can get, I believe it's 20% off if you use code Captain Morgan. Click the link in the description to take advantage of that. I also use Lamb's clothing, as we talk about in this episode. Anytime I work on my computer, I wear their underwear, which is actually the only thing that I'm wearing right now. And every single time I fly or I'm in crowded areas, I wear their shirt and their beanie for maximal protection from EMFs. Lamb's clothing blocks up to 99% of these harmful electromagnetic frequencies because they were made out of silver, which is actually antimicrobial. So it's got a bonus benefit that because we don't wear deodorant, because there's a bunch of toxins and chemicals in that, prevents us from stinking so bad. Honestly, that's one of the perks that I don't really talk about as much, but you can wear that shirt for multiple days in a row and it still smells fine. So if you guys want to hook up on anything from Lambs, use code Captain Morgan. Click the link in the description. Also, keep your phone in airplane mode. When I do use my laptop on my lap, which is very rare, I'll put one of the Lambs EMF blocking shirts over my lap and work on there. There's discounts to all these things in the description. Also, wearing tight underwear can reduce testosterone.
Well, the one study that everyone goes off was a study they did on dogs. So we don't have any conclusive data on that in humans, but reasonable to assume that there could be some effect there, especially when we look at things like, all this athletic wear that we tend to wear as underwear that we know are petroleum-based products. And, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we don't know for sure, but I'd be surprised if there isn't some kind of effect from always being exposed to these things that have levels of like BPA and other shit in them.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to make a high quality organic cotton men's underwear line that fits great, let me know, because I've been looking for them.
Yeah.
Lululemon, man, they figured it out. They fit so fucking good.
Yeah. I free ball it.
There we go. Maybe that's what I gotta do. But if you free ball it and you're wearing this, how is that any different?
Because it's
you're
loose.
Wearing Lululemon pants.
It's loose. If you're talking about from the polyester, then it's no different. Although it doesn't really come in contact with like my testicles, but our skin is our largest organ. So this is a fantastic topic that a lot of people aren't aware of. If you wear polyester or synthetic clothes or rub,
at the very least, sleep naked.
Oh, of course, sleep naked. And we could take it a step further, and it's like, what is your bed made of? What are your sheets made of? Is your bed off-gassing VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds? Are your sheets made of cotton, or are they synthetic? Like anything that comes in contact in your body is absorbed. So a big problem is personal care products that are just filled with endocrine disruptors. From artificial fragrances are a big one. So if you're still using Axe body spray or any sort of cologne, stop it immediately. Same thing for ladies, perfume, any sort of lotion or body wash or hair wash, anything. Make sure that it is natural and artificial fragrance free. Let's touch on ice and hot. So I think one of the reasons why wearing underwear may reduce testosterone is that it can heat the testicles, which it's been proven that heating the testicles can reduce testosterone. So
have you seen those ice packs that you can
the underwear
them?
ice?
Yeah.
No. I have iced my balls though, which I have absolutely noticed an increase in what I imagine to be testosterone. Again, I haven't gotten these things tested, but I feel more energized after, and definitely the quality of erections after helps tremendously. So one of my sex hacks is to get an ice pack to ice your balls and get red light at the same time, and then after you're fucking rock solid, ready to roll. Be careful with heating the testicles, which is one of the problems with working on your laptop, with wearing tight underwear.
Well, we also know
sitting for a long time.
We know with the laptop and the phone that the electromagnetic radiation, it's not just the heat. Like there's other shit happening there that is not good for you.
Correct. Icing and ice baths can boost testosterone. That's one of the perks of them. Testicle tanning, just like getting sun on the rest of your body, if you get it directly on your testicles, be careful. Obviously, you don't want to burn your sack, so you can hack it with red light. So I use Gemba Red. I travel with one of their panels. So if you want to get the hookup on that, use the code in the description. They are EMF free. They are affordable. They use high quality wavelengths of light, which is one of the things that you want to look for with these other companies. Specifically the infrared rays can help with blood flow. So really good to do before sex. Is there anything else that you can think of from a testosterone optimization standpoint?
Man, I think we covered it. Like if everyone's doing the things we talked about here, they're going to be in great shape.
We covered the main things. There is something to be said about thinking and living a more high testosterone lifestyle, right? Like competition, for example, has been proven to increase testosterone. So healthy competition, and even just with yourself, like progressive overload can be a fantastic example of this. Like working towards some higher goal and like just striving to be better, right?
Be on the hunt.
Exactly, be on the hunt. Yeah, I'm sure there's some little nuanced things that we've missed, but absolutely we covered the basics, which again are optimal training, which we covered Sam's PPP method, the
triple P protocol.
The triple P protocol. So we covered the training aspect of it. We covered the nutrition, the sleep, which is huge, sunlight, diet, and stress, right? So if you have any questions, leave them in the description of this video. If you're listening on audio, Sam, where can people reach out to you?
You can reach out to me at the Samuel Johnston on Instagram and TikTok, and at the Sam Johnston on Twitter.
Cool.
Or stateofalpha.com. That's my company.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll put some we'll have some testimonials from Alpha Body Systems come up on the screen, so you guys can see the amazing transformation that Sam was able to facilitate with this client as well. Sweet. All right, Sam, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Flex the bicep. Boom. See you next time.